Hello, and welcome to the Objective Health Show. I am your host today, Erica, and joining me in our studio is Doug, Elliot, and Tiff. And we
Hello.
got Damien in the background on the ones and twos.
Yay.
Hello. Hello.
So, thanks everyone for tuning in. We're changing up our format a little bit in this new year, 2020. Hopefully, it proves to be prosperous. And today we're going to just focus on one topic. And the topic, as you can see from our visual behind Doug in the background,
Sweet.
is human breast milk and babies, and how breastfeeding helps babies tell time via circadian signals from mom. So
Yeah.
we chose this topic. It's a recent article came out, and it was talking about how human milk is actually more than just a meal. It's a clock providing time of day information for infants and the importance of proper feeding times. And in our modern day culture, for anyone that has young babies, the propensity to pump has become really popular. I think in the article they were saying like what 65% of moms now pump, most
Mhm.
likely in the US because we have like what 3 weeks of maternal leave in the US. I mean,
If
it's
that.
really, if that, it's really small. And most moms are have to go back to work to,
Mhm.
pay for this brand new baby that they have. So this technology, while it's great, could really be having some detrimental side effects for babies. And what I find interesting about the article is that it really sets up that circadian clock for people for the rest of their life, like the
Mhm.
proper feeding and the difference between, say, morning time milk as opposed to evening time milk.
Yeah.
They call it milk influx.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think pumping your milk is one of those modern day convenience things. I mean, for a while, like maybe back in the 60s, 70s, 50s or so, breastfeeding wasn't really that in vogue and there was a lot of formula feeding. But
Mm.
in the last decade or so, it's been being more encouraged that breast milk is best, encouraging women to breastfeed, like all the programs like for um, mothers at local health departments. There's all these signs up saying breast milk is best, breast milk is best. But then, like we said, if you have to go to work and your relatives are watching your baby and you have to pump, you still want your baby to be breastfed because breast milk is best.
Mm.
uh, you have to just be careful for reasons that we'll get into. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Think
I
that
was surprised. I didn't even think about this. Of course, I don't have any children, but did you think about it, Erica? You've breastfed.
I did. It's interesting because, for one, just even getting a baby to breastfeed initially, like that's why I think Tiffany, they set up these organizations. Like in the US, they have an organization called the La Leche League,
Hmm.
which basically, if your baby's born in a hospital, they come in and they teach you how to get the baby to latch on properly. And they really remind you not to get frustrated if the baby is not suckling properly or if it doesn't want to eat. And in those first 48 hours after the baby's born, it's like pure colostrum, right? It's all the important antibodies and nutrients for the baby. And it's really a transition for a lot of moms because it's not the most comfortable thing. And this might be sharing too much information, but the La Leche League will tell you if you're feeling sensitive with breastfeeding to take a toothbrush and to brush your nipple with it to harden it up a little bit. So
wow.
so and a lot of women in the past, I mean, my kids are in their 20s, so this is a long time ago, but they would get frustrated that first week and, oh, it's too painful or my milk isn't coming,
Hmm.
and they would just give up. And like you said, Tiff, like that's where formula, especially in a hospital, like, oh, we'll give your baby formula. And if you don't really start in that first window, then it's really hard to go back to
Mm-hmm.
getting the baby to learn how to latch on. And one of the things is a bottle, the baby doesn't have to work so hard for the milk, right? It just kind of
Mm-hmm.
pours into their mouth. Whereas a baby's breastfeeding, it has to work really hard. It has to learn how to use the muscles for suckling. And then aside from all that is the really important part of bonding, like having that initial experience of holding the baby, bonding with the baby, and really giving up your time schedule as a parent and being on that baby's time schedule. So I could see how, it's frustrating. And yes, the bottle seems better. But after reading this article, it really seems like you're setting up later in life issues with circadian rhythms and night and day eating habits.
Yeah. Well, the article is like it's fascinating when I read it because I had never really thought about this kind of thing before. For people who are looking for it, was on a site called theconversation.com. And it's called Human Breast Milk May Help Babies Tell Time Via Circadian Signals from Mom. And yeah, I found it's really fascinating because I mean, basically what it made me think about is the idea that the baby is not just getting food like you were saying, it's not just a meal like you were saying, Erica. It's actually like there's information there that the baby is actually taking in information from the mother. The mother is kind of like used to reading the environment and everything like that, so the baby is getting all this information about the environment that it's going to be encountering. And one of those being circadian signaling, like just the idea that there's more cortisol in daytime milk, and then in nighttime milk there's more melatonin. It's much more complicated than that. Like there's a lot of different fluctuations that are going on, but just the idea that the baby is getting information about the environment when nighttime is, when daytime is, and so its body can kind of react to that in a proper way. And there was even another article that we were reading for this that was talking about how when the baby was getting sick, the mother's milk would be higher in like immunocompounds, basically, like things to help the baby to fight off that illness. So there's so much kind of synergy going on there, and it was really, really fascinating.
Well, I thought that one you just mentioned, Doug, was fascinating. The woman that the article was about, she pumps her milk. She took a picture of the milk she pumped the day before. She noticed that her baby got sick and it was just, white looking regular milk. And then she noticed that her baby was sick and she pumped the next evening and the milk was kind of thick and yellow looking like colostrum. So my question was, before I read the entire article, how does the mom's breast know to change the milk? So apparently it's not just information going from the mother's breast milk into the baby. When the baby is suckling, the baby's saliva kind of goes up into the nipple, and the contents of the saliva, the mother's receptors can, see like if there's like increased white blood cells or some kind of sickness going on, and it can alter the content of the breast milk. And it's just so incredible how the human body works.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It kind of demonstrates that it's almost impossible. I would bet it's probably near enough impossible to fully replicate that kind of thing. If you have that constant intercommunication between the child and the mother, this direct feedback relationship, information going back and forward all of the time. And there's probably many other kind of aspects to this that haven't even been discovered yet. Maybe like electromagnetic stuff.
Or emotional stuff even.
Yeah, exactly. So there's probably all of this non-biochemical stuff that we can't even measure. But ultimately, when you think about that feedback, how important that is for essentially providing the baby with a stable foundation, allowing them to effectively adapt to various different changes. For instance, the type of the environment that the mother lives in. Like there's all of this information about the microbiome and things as well. So it's that the mother's body is adapted to a very specific environment, the type of bacteria in the house, the type of bacteria in the kind of local community, the different types of soil, the minerals in the soil, the lack of minerals in the soil, the vitamin intake, all of these different things, the chemicals in the air, the amount of kind of silica in the rainwater, so ultimately there's all of these probably millions of factors which are communicated to the baby and kind of say to the baby, right, okay, this is the environment you're going to be coming into. You need to build a system which is suited to this environment so that you can survive. And then you think about how like potentially important that is. And you can, I mean, it hasn't even been fleshed out, but I can imagine that that's pretty damn important to get a baby in a healthy state. But then you try to replicate that by taking amino acids, by taking fats, by taking sugars, and putting it into like a formula bottle. I mean, it was always deemed to fail, right? It was always deemed to fail. There's no way that could ever mimic the kind of complexity of the mother's milk. But then we take in this information as well, this recent stuff about the circadian rhythm. It's like, even, I mean, whenever you try to cheat the system, you're always going to lose to some extent. That's what it's like. It's like, okay, you can understand the predicament that women have or they're in because they live busy lives. They live, they have to work jobs. They don't have time to basically be feeding the baby all day long. But effectively, they are potentially going to be causing problems to the baby if they don't do that. And sometimes it's not possible, of course, but actually, like, it shows that, I mean, for instance, in the mother's milk, the breast milk, in the morning time, this contains like a complex set of different hormones, and Doug just touched on it a minute ago. But it contains higher levels of cortisol, right? So cortisol is one of the stress hormones. It's naturally follows like the circadian cycle. It's higher in the morning time in human beings. It's one of the things, there's something called the cortisol awakening response. It's one of the things that actually helps us get out of bed in the morning, right? So this is actually really important for, it does follow the circadian rhythm, but it's actually one of those things which is going to kind of wake the baby up, to keep it awake in the daytime and essentially communicate that it is morning time, that it is daytime or whatever. But not only that, there's also other things like, it says it has specialized kinds of immune cells. It has higher levels of minerals, such as iron, such as zinc, magnesium, potassium, sodium. These are all highest in the morning time. On the other hand, you have this nighttime hormone, melatonin, which is kind of associated with sleep in human beings, and it naturally starts to gradually increase in the evening time upon dim light onset. So when the lights go down, our body starts making melatonin. So this is another way. If the baby's got his eyes closed all day, or if he's, if he's sleeping and all of this kind of stuff, he's focused on building a body. He's not really concerned with trying to detect whether it's night or day. But the mother, in giving the baby this nighttime hormone, is essentially communicating that in just this amazing way that I certainly didn't think could even occurred before.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is. What's really also interesting is that the study that they were referring to in that article actually came out in 2009. So they've actually known about this for a very long time, 11 years basically. But I didn't know about this before. Not that I'm really the target audience necessarily, but I do look into the nutritional aspects of newborns and that sort of thing. So I'm surprised that I had never heard of it. And it kind of like, the advice that they kind of give in the article is that if women are pumping, they should be marking the time of day down on the milk, so that if they are required to give pumped milk, like they can't be breastfeeding when they need to, then at least they'll be able to match up morning milk or evening milk with whatever time of day the baby's actually feeding on it,
Mhm.
which is probably a good idea. I mean, obviously, ideally, the child would be getting it directly from the breast because that's like immediate feedback. It's a communication immediately about the immediate environment that the child is in at that moment. But I think that this pump thing, I mean, going with the formula feeding or something like that is just absolute last resort because it is just missing so much. Like it really is. It would be like, it'd be like feeding your kid who's on solid food like donuts, right? It's kind of like, well, it's got the fat and the carbs and the protein in there, but that's about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, there are, which I didn't know either, there are milk banks all over the country, like nearly, well, in the US, nearly in every state. And I think there are some in Canada also.
Mm.
And the whole purpose of these milk banks is like moms who may have recently had a baby or recently lost a baby want to donate some of their breast milk. And hospitals use it in neonatal intensive care units. And they collect the milk. The moms have to be tested. Like if you were to give blood, you have to be tested for like, hepatitis, HIV, other sexually transmitted diseases. So they run all these tests on the women. They test their milk for purity, and you can't smoke, you can't use drugs or anything like that. And they accept your milk. These NICUs or intensive care units use it for babies whose, for some reason, their moms can't produce enough milk, or the babies might be premature and they can't really latch on to a nipple. So they get the milk and of course, they'll screen it for contaminants. Then they'll combine like different mothers' milks, which kind of makes sense. I mean, even though I think it's gross, but seems like it should all just come from one source. And then in some cases, they'll homogenize it, and in some cases,
really?
they'll pasteurize it. Yeah, they'll pasteurize it also, which is
That's ridiculous.
Not the best thing. But
killing all the bacteria.
Yeah.
The fact that they would go through all of that trouble to collect breast milk from these random women and freeze it and ship it out to hospitals just shows that formula ain't worth the plastic that it's stored in. I mean, formula must be the worst thing ever if they have this whole network of milk banks that people can donate to. And I've also read, like in other places, like vegan moms, for some reason their milk doesn't come down or they don't produce enough. They'll try and get milk from some of their vegan friends.
Yeah, that's
better than
probably
soy
the
formula.
Scenario. Oh yeah, okay, better than soy formula. Not much better though, because it's basically soy formula,
It
isn't
would be
it?
soy formula. Yeah.
But if you're a vegan, like these vegan moms, they want milk from another vegan mom. So if that mom is just drinking soy milk herself, that's basically soy formula. But I'm sure it's still better than formula.
I think it would be.
But there aren't any actual vegan formulas in the US. I think in Europe they do have vegan baby formula, but only in the US they just have these organic or dairy-free or soy formulas. That's the best you can get.
They're not vegan. What is it about them?
No,
that
they're
isn't
not vegan. The D3, they get it from sheep's wool.
Of course, yeah.
You have to put D3 in baby formula or you can't sell it.
Right.
Well, it's interesting too, because babies that are fed formula, I used to take care of a lot of babies back in the day, and they have this very yeasty smell to them. I know that kind of sounds crazy, but it seemed like the formula just caused a lot of mucus and a lot of buildup, and it would actually come out of their pores like a yeast smell. It was really bizarre. And kind of on the alternatives to milk, because what you were saying, Tiffany, is sometimes, for whatever reason, women aren't producing enough breast milk or you have to supplement. what started happening in the 90s was that instead of giving a baby cow milk, because, that's not necessarily the best thing, the option was goat milk, because they were a little bit smaller animals, a little bit more the size of the human. But that's definitely not vegan. But, because it is a reality that sometimes there's not enough milk, or if you've got a really hungry baby, it can suck you dry in a sense. It's interesting when I was breastfeeding, my homeopath told me to drink dark beer like Guinness. He said that had the most nutrients in it that would go directly to the baby, obviously minus the alcohol. You know what I mean? And then to do teas, like they have all these mother milk teas that teas that you can make that help you produce more milk. And I could see how being a vegan, if you're already low in fat in general, that your body is just not going to produce what it needs to supply the baby.
For the vegans, they have something called a booby bar. And it's a vegan lactation bar, and it has flax seeds, oats, and other herbal ingredients in it.
Probably fenugreek.
Yeah.
Fenugreek, and there's another one too, I can't remember right now, that are supposed to be good for breast milk production.
Well, it was interesting in that article how they were talking about chrono signals in milk, and how that calibrates the infant circadian biology. And so if babies drink mistimed milk, they may struggle with sleep and digestion and development. I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Back to what you were saying about the importance of timing and labeling. And, there's plenty of moms who spent all night up going, why is this baby wide awake? And it's the middle of the night, and then they sleep all day. And, after months of that, it's why you see women at the grocery store with their shirts inside out and they're disheveled, they haven't showered in days, is because of this the rhythms. And it's so important because it sets up, again, as I was saying earlier, the rest of that child's life. I mean, maybe that's why we're seeing this rise in obese children, is because this possibility of having the convenience of formula, and it completely just knocked everything out of whack. And now these children are eating much more food than they need to. They're eating late at night or all day long, and it's just completely wreaked havoc on the system.
Considering the fact that having a baby that is up when it's supposed to be asleep is basically torture for the new parents, I'm surprised that this whole milk thing hasn't kind of been more widespread. Maybe it is in kind of like, child, like new mother circles or something like that. Like maybe it is kind of spreading around there, but like I said, I'd never heard of it, and that kind of surprises me, because you would think that, a lot of the times the kind of folk remedies tend to spread around in different circles. Like, you hear about different ways of dealing with different things. So this sounds like something that every mother should be informed of.
Yeah, not only should you not use formula, but if you do have to pump, make sure you label the time on there.
Yeah.
And it should be something that doctors, especially doctors that are working with pregnant women, should be informed about. Because if you're, well, I'm being optimistic here, but if you're concerned about the future well-being of your young patient, then you would think that something as basic as this type of information would be shared. I mean, hey, you want to sleep well at night, you want your baby to sleep well at night, then these are these little things that you can do.
And that would probably be the best seller on it. Like, if you want your baby to be able to sleep when the baby is supposed to be asleep, and you'll get more rest too, breastfeed your baby.
I think maybe
preferably on demand. Yeah.
We might be expecting a bit too much out of doctors, though, to be honest. I'm not sure they're giving a whole lot of new baby advice to the mothers, really.
Well, they should put it on the front page of whatever magazine new moms read.
Yeah, what is that? Mother's Day? No, I don't know.
Mother's Daily.
Well, it's interesting too, because a couple of years ago, and I think we even did a show on this back in 2017. You guys remember that article about it's dangerous to call breastfeeding natural?
Yes, I do remember that.
Pediatricians were promoting disinformation. So instead of going with, as you said, Doug, the study's been out for years. You know what I mean? They're like, oh no, it's not natural. They need to be immunized, and promoting breastfeeding is problematic and even troubling.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For a while there, they were actually trying to say that formula feeding was better than breastfeeding. It's just like mind-boggling that they think they can get away with something like that. Unbelievable.
And it was in the journal Pediatrics, so that is
that journal is dead to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Cancel your subscription, Tiff.
Well, they were saying that the intent of the article appears to be aimed at bolstering vaccines. So but they call it ethically problematic.
Well, I know that Nestle was in a lot of trouble a while back. Like, this is a while back, like maybe in like the 80s or something like that, when and I'm quoting this all from memory, so I might have some of the details wrong, but basically Nestle was in third world countries, in Africa if I'm not mistaken, actually convincing mothers that their formula was better than breastfeeding, and getting them to stop breastfeeding and favoring the formula instead. And it came to widespread attention, as far as I know, because the water that they were mixing the formula with was not sanitary, basically. So there was a bunch of babies who were getting sick and dying because the mother was, if the mother's drinking the water and it's going through them and they're kind of like acclimatized to it and everything, then the baby, they're filtering it basically for the baby. The baby's not going to necessarily be exposed to that, but it probably will get the immune components that the mother has created. So the baby will get a natural kind of immunization to whatever's in the environment. But in this situation, it was the opposite. They were giving the babies directly dirty water, essentially, mixed with formula. So the babies were getting sick and maybe even dying. And it was a big controversy. Nestle is a very evil company, by the way. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, like, and I've probably shared this on a past show, but I had the chicken pox while I was breastfeeding. And I didn't know I had the chicken pox until I went to the hospital and they told me I'd never had them before. But I was breastfeeding my daughter while I had the chicken pox, and she didn't get them, even though I had the open sores and everything. And so she got that natural immunity. Now, a few years later, I think when she was like 7 or 8, she did get the chicken pox, but she didn't get them nearly as bad. And I thought that was really fascinating, that here you can have this really contagious illness, you're breastfeeding your baby and they don't get the illness, probably because the antibodies.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I think just from now, as we've gone into the vaccine issue so many times, a lot of in the past, a lot of kids were getting those natural immunities to sicknesses like that via the breast milk, building their immune system, introducing these types of pathogens in a way that they can fight it safely. And
Yeah. Breast is best, guys.
That's the takeaway message.
That's the takeaway message.
I wonder if we'll see a new, breast milk bars opening for people.
Well, I don't know about that.
No, of course it will be pumped. It will be on tap, right?
Oh, God.
But it'll be labeled with the proper time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is, you can have your morning with your coffee, or your evening, your warm glass of breast milk. So it's not mistimed.
Or if you want to stay up late, you can have morning at night. If you got to pull an all-nighter or something like that.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was in another article that we read called Breast Milk Should Be Drunk at the Same Time of Day that it's expressed. And this was actually back in 2009 in Science Daily. But they talked about how scientists look at nucleotides in breast milk, like andosine, guanosine, and uridine. And those actually excite or relax the nervous system of the child and promote restfulness or sleep, and how that varies in the 24-hour period. And I don't know a lot about those nucleotides, but I would imagine that it's really important for brain development, physical development, and the overall health of a baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's more components that any laboratory can find that are in breast milk. So, like you said, Doug, breast is best. Don't
Yep.
try and fool Mother Nature because you will not win.
Yeah. And your kid will pay the price.
Yep.
But they're starting to, try it. Well, the formula thing was a try and fail.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, anything else, guys?
That's it.
Probably just that I'd say one last thing, that breast is definitely best.
Well put, Elliot. Well put.
Well, thank you, folks, for tuning in. And I hope this little short bit on breastfeeding is helpful. You can share with your friends and family, and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel below. And we look forward to seeing you all again. Thanks for joining me, hosts.
No worries.
right.
Bye, everybody.
See.
Bye.